Sometimes, reality has a strange way of revealing what's been quietly waiting in the background. There are seasons when the familiar patterns people lean on begin to dissolve, not out of malice, but because the ordinary has outlived its purpose. It's as if existence itself has set a timer and, when it rings, every stale habit and outdated comfort is quietly removed. What's the last thing that forced a change? Was it a silent nudge, or did it feel more like a tidal wave? Take a second to consider it. If a memory surfaces, don't push it away. Sometimes sharing even a single number can align with what's moving beneath the surface. There's a certain irony in believing life is completely within grasp. When the foundation of control is built on shifting ground, eventually, something larger takes over, something woven into the patterns of nature and mind. What's happening now isn't a storm for the sake of chaos. Instead, it's a cleansing current, sweeping through and discarding the illusions that kept things predictable but stagnant. The first to go is the false safety net, those cozy but hollow routines that promise security while quietly siphoning away vitality. Losing these anchors can sting, but in their absence, an opening is created for growth that would never fit into the old mold. Change rarely asks permission. One day, it becomes clear that what once felt like home now feels unfamiliar, almost as if the script has been rewritten without notice. This sensation, being nudged out of the life once so carefully crafted, is unsettling, yet it's also a kind of hidden mercy. The old constructs aren't dismantled gently. They're deconstructed so that anything built on half-truths or borrowed meaning can be swept away. What emerges isn't always clear at first, but beneath the rubble, the potential for a life that resonates more deeply starts to glimmer. Sometimes, a moment arrives when the path forward requires a cost, and the currency is nothing less than personal truth. It's as if the world pauses and quietly demands clarity, not a polished reflection, but a sharp, unfiltered image untouched by the feedback loops of external validation. There's a certain discomfort in seeing one's own outline stripped of its usual polish, no longer protected by social rituals or the applause of a crowd. In that clarity, the habits of adaptation, smiling at the right time, softening edges, shrinking to fit into accepted shapes, begin to feel less like survival tools and more like walls closing in. So, the stage is set for a single, irreversible decision: authenticity or conformity. Both won't fit through the same door. Pause for a second. What happens when the image held up for others starts to feel like an old uniform, tight at the seams? Has that shift crept into daily life? The tension builds as if invisible wires are tightening around the script. For some, it might have started with a faint restlessness, a stubborn ache that refused to be silenced, a quiet weariness from playing supporting roles in someone else's narrative. Yet now, what was once easy to ignore becomes impossible to escape. The old game of swapping real for acceptable, hiding the wild pulse of individuality for the safe applause of agreement, becomes too heavy to carry. Approval itself transforms from a gentle reassurance into a gilded cell. The chase for belonging dissolves into rehearsed performances, while real connection is lost in translation. And as the days pass, trying to keep one foot in each world only sharpens the edge. Relationships start feeling brittle, words get tangled, fatigue becomes a constant undertow. How long can both masks and essence coexist before something breaks? Ever notice how these quiet fractures become louder lately? Eventually, what can't be held together simply falls apart. Those who were drawn to the public persona will disappear, like fruit that detaches when its season ends. This moment isn't designed as punishment but as release, a peeling away of the layers that no longer serve. The next stretch of life isn't shaped by external judgments, it's defined by the residue of past actions, the unseen debts accumulated by every shortcut and compromise. Now, every corner cut, every buried instinct, sends a message back with the accuracy of a returning echo. The truth that emerges in these moments isn't a verdict from outside forces, but the logical conclusion of inner choices long made. Has there ever been a time when the removal of the false felt like loss at first, but later revealed itself as liberation? Sometimes, life circles back in the most curious ways. Those conversations skipped, promises left hanging, ambitions quietly boxed away when they started to sting, none of it disappears. Instead, existence keeps a silent tally, and eventually, those moments return wearing disguises, a string of delays, an email that keeps getting lost, familiar faces resurfacing as if summoned by chance. These aren't punishments sent from afar, they're the echoes of choices that never quite finished their arc. The tangled mess of strange coincidences, the feeling that things aren't adding up, is simply a reminder. What once went unresolved asks for closure in its own time. Ever had a moment when life seemed to rerun an old scene just to see if the story could finally end differently? This phase isn't a cosmic penalty box. It's a reflection, a projection of unfinished patterns into the present moment. The pressure felt now isn't the weight of someone else's hand, it's the gravity of one's own history looping back for a reckoning. So when the days start to feel dense or unfair, maybe the more interesting question isn't, why now? But, who was steering the ship when the lights were off? The observer and the observed have merged. Destiny isn't dealt out by invisible hands, it's the ripple that follows every action, the record of choices written in the fabric of everyday life. When the veil drops, pretense no longer stays hidden in the shadows. Moments arrive when the theater lights come up, not on a prepared stage, but right in the middle of a bluff, caught between roles, unable to hide behind carefully rehearsed lines. This isn't an accident, it's the design. The cycle that's unfolding now is intent on clearing away every mask, stripping away borrowed identities so that only the most genuine story remains. Those who built castles out of bravado, who held authority through mimicry rather than merit, find themselves exposed not in secrecy, but under the full glare of public attention. What's more uncomfortable, being questioned in private, or being revealed in a room where everyone is watching? Yet, the motive isn't to shame, but to transform. This is a dismantling of ego, an initiation that shakes the scaffolding of self-image and leaves only what is built to endure. The persona constructed for applause can't withstand the heat of real scrutiny. The tensions that have been quietly brewing, the nervous energy hidden under productivity, the uncertainty behind the scenes, now break the surface. False strength crumbles quickly, but what survives this purification is forged into something more durable. Looking back, can it be said that the most fragile moments weren't actually endings, but the spark of a more lasting power? Sometimes, the scripts people write for themselves get performed so well, the audience vanishes and only the empty stage remains. Claims of happiness, declarations of harmony, assertions of capability, all ring hollow when reality no longer fits the story. This moment, where the performance goes unacknowledged, strips away the applause and demands sincerity. The safety of curated appearances dissolves, and the absence of validation feels harsh, but there's something almost sacred in what follows. When the constructed image collapses, the genuine presence steps out from behind the curtain. If routine behaviors remain unchecked, they quickly become the architects of a slow collapse, turning silent habits into powerful undercurrents. Consider for a moment, is there a space between intention and routine where truth has started to leak through? Intention is no match for ritual, especially now. Every automated response, late-night distractions, endless postponements, quiet indulgences, steps out from the shadows and begins steering the narrative. These patterns, once small enough to ignore, now grow bold, demanding attention. The habits that once seemed harmless are suddenly at the wheel, and the results aren't subtle. Bank balances dip, focus unravels, the tiniest temptations become tides that wash away discipline. This is the line in the sand. The days of drifting along on partial effort are over. Either conscious choices become the compass, or habitual cycles orchestrate decline. When did those little, almost invisible, decisions start feeling like they controlled the direction of entire days. Existence doesn't challenge potential. It measures practice. It isn't perfection that's required, but an honest audit. Are today's actions building the foundation for tomorrow's possibilities, or slowly dismantling them? The answer shows up in the aches of a body pulled in too many directions, the fog that clouds clarity, the pressure of lost hours. Tangible, not just theoretical. Life turns the abstract into something physical, something undeniable. Is there a moment, even recently, where the weight of unmade decisions showed up not just in mood, but in muscle and mind? Every cycle of growth is an unskippable lesson. Refusal only invites repetition. Those who dodge self-examination spiral. Those who lean in ascend. Middle ground evaporates. It becomes a daily confrontation, discipline or decay. Patterns reveal themselves through the mirror of others, colleagues, friends, strangers, each interaction a test, a hidden curriculum. Relationships are no longer accidental, they become diagnostic, each tension and argument a clue, every unexpected distance a lesson. Has anyone noticed certain faces reappearing just as old patterns flare up? Sometimes the world around isn't a random cast, it's a collection of teachers, each one exposing a code that's ready to be rewritten. Sometimes what seems like loss, friends drifting away, family repeating old roles, companions draining energy, becomes a necessary clearing. The space left behind is no accident. That friend who fades out, that family member who hits the same nerve, that colleague who suddenly feels like static, all serve as reflections of internal patterns. Every subtle shift in a relationship, every change in dynamic, becomes a message from the universe, inviting a closer look at the energies that have quietly shaped experience. Have the relationships in your life recently revealed truths that once went unnoticed? Sometimes the people who leave are simply making space for the version of self that's ready to emerge. Not every companion is designed to join the journey into uncharted seasons. Some arrive solely to illustrate how release can be a higher form of love. Patterns re-emerge, conversations that loop like old songs, frustrations landing with uncanny precision, situations repeating until their lesson is unmistakable. This isn't a random shuffle, it's life holding up a prism to show hidden facets of self. The critic in the room, the needy friend, the draining colleague, each is a living reflection, revealing internal doubts or unmet needs. It stings when certain bonds dissolve or when relationships quietly turn into faint echoes. There's a sense of grieving, even for connections that technically remain but have lost their substance. Yet, this is not a punishment. It's a gentle reduction, trimming away what no longer vibrates in tune with growth. Many connections were always meant to expire, like fruit reaching the end of its season. Clinging only prolongs old stories. True advancement comes from releasing, even when betrayal stings most. Life isn't removing others for the sake of discomfort, but to clear the static so inner clarity can emerge again. Ever notice how the same kind of person keeps appearing until the lesson lands? Each character plays a role in the current evolution. Sacrifice can no longer be sidestepped. Desire alone is irrelevant. The currency now is surrender. True progress won't arrive bundled in easy inspiration, but arrives wrapped in struggle, fatigue, and tough choices. Half-hearted efforts, vision boards, and daydreams are quickly exposed as insufficient. Each ambition has a hidden cost, and for the first time, the tag is clearly visible. This is the crossroad, breakthrough or excuse, sacrifice for purpose or sacrifice of purpose. No middle route exists. Sometimes what must be surrendered is sleep. Other times, it's belonging, comfort, or the familiar mask of an old identity. What's the last thing that seemed hardest to release? These aren't always grand gestures, but often small, pivotal decisions that shape everything beneath the surface. Tension has become the training ground. Endurance is sculpted through repetition, through showing up when the world is asleep and momentum is low. Discipline is forged not in applause but in isolation, in moments when internal resistance is loudest. The weight isn't there to break, but to awaken hidden strength. Every step forward comes with the urge to retreat, the seduction of ease. And yet, this is when the call for perseverance grows louder. Pain signals proximity to transformation, not distance. Delaying the work, waiting for perfect timing, is itself a trap. Now is always the hour of reckoning. This era doesn't promise unearned gifts, but holds out the possibility of lasting legacy for those who pay the cost. So the question emerges, what is truly worth letting go to become what is possible? If the decision is postponed too long, opportunity fades. Legacy is earned in the refusal to quit, in the willingness to give up the lesser for the sake of the greater. One of the most seductive lies the mind entertains is that there's always more sand left in the hourglass. The internal narrative often insists on pacing, timing, holding out for some idealized right moment. Yet, what's unfolding now is not an extension but a countdown, a gradual tightening of the aperture. Opportunities don't simply pause. Sometimes, they dissolve without warning, leaving only their shadow behind. Strange signals, fleeting impulses in the middle of the night, names that echo in the mind, doors that seem to hover open, are not distractions but alarms. Each nudge, each persistent tug at awareness, signals the urgency of now, not later. Ever notice how delay carries a subtle tension, like a vibration warning that something real is at stake? Most crossroads in life aren't missed by outright failure. They're missed by standing still too long. The current season tempts with the illusion of slack, a lull that tricks the senses into thinking there's margin to spare. Yet the real test is hidden in the quiet spaces, how action unfolds when no one's watching, how quickly the necessary leap is taken before the platform vanishes. That conversation postponed, that idea gathering dust, that risk deferred, none are exempt from expiration. Not every window returns. The cost of hesitation is sometimes only realized in retrospect, when the window has closed, leaving behind only an ache of possibility. What's waiting for attention right now that might not wait much longer? This cycle operates like an unannounced audit, each decision quietly tallied, every delay deducted from potential. The difference between readiness and regret can be razor thin. Some doors don't slam shut, they simply evaporate, replaced by a different reality. There's no malice in this process, just a strict accounting. Sometimes the only real cruelty is the inertia of almost, the regret of nearly. For those waiting for an unmistakable prompt, consider this a blunt, unembellished invitation to act, not dream. The universe isn't interested in rewinding, it's interested in receipts. What gets left on the table becomes a lesson, not an opportunity. So the question is worth asking. Is caution just prudence, or is it actually fear wearing a disguise? The mask of identity, comfortable and worn, is being pulled away, leaving what's real exposed. When the urge to move is strongest, what is it that holds things back? There are moments when the greatest risk isn't action, but hesitation. In the end, legacy belongs to those who were willing to cross the threshold, even if their hands shook as they turned the handle. Every structure built, status, lifestyle, image, faces an audit under this cosmic weather, and the review is anything but gentle. It's not a quiet reconsideration, it's a crack that splits the shell, no matter how seamless its surface once seemed. This isn't just about shifting names or roles, it's a fundamental reckoning. The career that once seemed like a victory now weighs like a borrowed suit. Ambitions pursued for years might no longer resemble the person carrying them. The lens is now turned inward, focusing not on social projections or digital snapshots, but on the raw, unadorned presence that emerges when everything else is on fire. It's a confrontation not with how things look, but with what remains when all facades melt away. This process isn't satisfied with surface-level adjustments. What unfolds is a gradual but relentless shedding. Boredom creeps in, restlessness flares, and soon enough, burnout and existential fatigue take the stage. Eventually, something gives, a wall is hit, and it's clear the outdated part isn't just the surroundings, but the self inhabiting them. What masquerades as a collapse is often the start of something truer, a breaking open rather than a breaking down. The map no longer fits the territory. In this in-between, the old skin dissolves before the new one forms, leaving a sense of being exposed and undefined. Attempts to revert to familiar patterns are blocked at every turn, while moving forward without clarity is equally resisted. In this space, only stillness and radical honesty can do the real work. This is not a call to double down on hustle, but to pause and let truth rise from the silence. The central question shifts from "what do I look like?" to "does this align with who I am now?" The old motivations, chasing respect, collecting applause, lose their shine, replaced by a longing for peace and authenticity. It's not a matter of reinvention, but a return to an original self, stripped of inherited expectations. What once felt like ambition now seems empty. What once felt like approval now pales in comparison to the simple act of feeling at home in one's own presence. When everything appears to be collapsing, when goals seem hollow and direction blurs, it's worth remembering that this unraveling is part of the process. Chaos has its own sacred function. It clears the debris so something genuine can step into the light. The sensation of falling apart is just the peeling away of costume. What emerges is a raw, undeniable reality. The message may come through tangled circumstances, but its impact is unmistakable. Anyone else feel as if life is stripping away every layer, just to see what's been waiting underneath? Insight doesn't always arrive wrapped in comfort or from familiar mouths. Sometimes it appears in the words of those least expected, a stranger dismissed, a colleague brushed off, someone whose life looks anything but orderly. Their message lands with a force that slices straight through the usual defenses, not out of cruelty, but necessity. This isn't about gentle encouragement, but about the kind of truth that jars, that is impossible to ignore. In these moments, it's not credentials or tone that matter, but the sheer weight of what is revealed. A passing remark from someone on the margins, a quip from a skeptic, a sharp comment from an ex, an offhand jab from a coworker, might sting in ways that linger. The pain isn't a mark of malice, but an indication of accuracy, a signal that a sensitive spot has been touched. These are not accidents, but moments of precision, carrying just enough truth to split the armor. Saturn isn't picky about the messenger. Readiness to hear is what matters most. The real test is not whether the source is perfect, but whether truth can be found among the noise. Growth sometimes wears a mask, appearing as annoyance or even outright confrontation. The greatest lessons can come from the most uncomfortable places. Can the wisdom hidden in friction be recognized, even when delivered without tact or grace? Often, the messengers most resisted are those pointing directly to the places where freedom is still out of reach. Growth is no longer restricted to safe spaces. It's raw, unpredictable, and frequently delivered in ways that are easy to reject. Letting go of pride, pausing before reacting, and considering why a particular comment landed so deeply can open doors previously overlooked. Insight can wear any disguise, from sarcasm to indifference, from criticism to outright disrespect. When wisdom is extracted from these unexpected sources, transformation doesn't just occur internally, it becomes visible in actions, thoughts, and responses. Allow the critics to speak. Allow the doubters to jeer. Their words may hold the very keys to the next level of becoming. For those who've made it to the end, gratitude is in order. If this content resonated or sparked reflection, support is always appreciated. Sharing thoughts in the comments, subscribing for more, or simply continuing this journey together. Until next time, take care and stay open to the unexpected forms that wisdom may take.